Alright, welcome back everybody, and we are going to do a tomato review on this tomato here, and this is called the Chmielewski's wild tomato. And so we finally made it here. It took me a couple of years to actually get to the point where the plant was able to grow and produce fruit. I had a hard time in the beginning getting it growing, but we got it, and now it's producing fruit. So as you can see either earlier in this video or it'll be a separate video where I shot on the plant and show you the plant and some of the fruit and everything on it like that. As you can see in that video, you could see what kind of a plant it is, and it's obviously a wild tomato variety, so it's going to have a lot of wild features to it. Some of the things I will point out, let me back you out a little bit. Some of the things I will point out about this variety is, number one, the plant is extremely fragile. So the slightest movement to the plant will just snap in your hands. It'll break as if it was made of thin glass. So it's very, very, very fragile. This plant does not like to be touched or handled in any way. And if you do handle it, it's a 90% chance you're going to break it right where you handle it. It's very fragile. These tomatoes that you're looking at here, I didn't actually pick off the plant. I waited till they fell from the plant. So these aren't fresh tomatoes picked from the plant. They literally fell off the plant. That was what was suggested to me to basically just wait until they drop. That's how you know when they're ripe, because there's really no way to know when these tomatoes are ripe or not. So when they fall from the plant, that pretty much means that they're about as ripe as they're going to get, and that's what I'm hoping for here. Keep in mind these are wild tomatoes, so it is going to have undertones to it that are going to be very strong, if not stronger than the tomato flavor itself, and it's really going to offset how I review this. So I might not be able to review it quite the conventional way, but I will break out the cheat sheet and we can still look at the numbers and kind of compare that to everything else. I can't follow every detail, at least I don't think I can, but when it comes to the flavor of these wild tomatoes, they're really bizarre, and the undertones are stronger than the tomato flavor. There's no other way to actually describe it. Now this particular tomato variety, I also want to mention, the foliage, the plant itself, has a very citrusy smell. It's very, very fragrant. So if you even rub against that, you're going to smell a whole area light up with like a citronella type of citrusy smell. It's very pleasant, actually. The smell is very, very aromatic. It's a very pleasant type of an odor. It's not disgusting in any way. However, the taste of the tomato doesn't taste anything like the smell. I'm pretty confident. I tasted one that already fell, but I just took like a lick off it because it split and it fell. So I just took a lick off it just to see. I didn't actually eat it, but I can tell you right now that it doesn't taste anything like the smell. The smell is very aromatic. It's very fluorescent in its odor. It's a very pleasant odor. It's not unpleasant in any way. So let's, well, I can't even weigh this because this isn't even going to show up on my scale because these are probably less than 1/10 of an ounce. So it's probably not even going to show up. They're very small, very light. Let's show you what the tomatoes look like in general. This is one that's probably 3/4 of the way ripe, or 70 or 90% ripe. I don't believe this one's fully ripe. When they get fully ripened, they get like a palish color to them. And sometimes, if you look, sometimes you'll see a little stripe form on the bottom. And oftentimes, if they're in fully exposed sun, the calyxes will start to get purple a little bit, and a little bit of purpling around the top of the tomato. So, but these were grown in my greenhouse, so they weren't exposed to sun quite the same way. You can see that the little petals coming off the calyx are very long. All right, so they're a very long variety. You can tell they're kind of ripe because when you squeeze them, they're kind of like, you can pop them. So you can kind of tell that they got some ripeness to them. But again, they're like most of the other wild varieties that I grow, and they're going to be very challenging to really work around some of the details on it. This may have things associated with me reviewing it that's different than even regular tomatoes. So we'll see when we get to that point. Here, let me show you the inside. It's very hard to handle this stuff with one hand. Okay, that's what it looks like on the inside. Not sure if I move things around. It almost looks like it's sort of a kiwi. Isn't that strange? Almost looks like a kiwi. Very, very small seeds. And I'm not going to weigh it. So let's go right over to the bricks. Let's do a bricks on this and see what it says on the bricks. I'm not expecting it to be too high, but I don't know. Nobody's ever done a bricks on the Solanum chmielewskii, at least as far as I know. The seeds are coming right out. Very messy. Just took a lick. I cheated. There's no bricks number. No bricks number. There's not enough juice coming out of it. Making a mess here trying to get this bricks. There's almost no juice in it. It's very hard to get any kind of a reading off of this. Okay, we got a bricks. It's barely reading because the juice is so light, but I can read the number, I think, a little bit. Okay, it's about a 10.5 on the bricks. 10.5, guys. This is going to be strange. I can tell you right now, I don't think it's sweet. I don't know. Maybe they'll be sweeter. I don't know. But all right, let's give a piece of this a go and see what it tastes like. I know a lot of my fans are tomato lovers, so this ought to be interesting. Wow. It is sweet. I have to spit the skins out, man. The skins on these things are tough. It's all seeds on the inside, by the way. It's just like a berry. This is like trying to eat a berry, really. It's got a really strange flavor, guys. I'm going to have to, I got to do another one here. The flavor is just really bizarre. The skins are tough. Wow, that's weird. The flavor is definitely awkward. All right, let's do it. Let's do the break out the cheat sheet and see what we can gather off of this. It's going to be a little on the hard side to actually use this sheet because it's a lot of it. I don't think it's going to be too applicable. All right, let's break out the cheat sheet and let's see what we can come up with as far as numbers go. This is weird, guys. I don't even know how to actually rate this thing. But anyway, let's start off with the sweetness. The funny thing about the sweetness on this tomato is it seemed like it had like a sweetness in the beginning when you first eat it. And then it gets overwhelmed by this flavor. This very strange and odd flavor that I'm going to have to describe to you somehow. But if I was to put a number on the sweetness, it was kind of high and then dissipated really quickly. So I'm not sure how to rate that, but if I was to put it on a number when you first get that sweetness on there, I would probably put that original sweetness punch at probably like a 38 in the beginning, and then it tapers off really quick, and the flavor becomes overwhelming. So you lose that sweetness right away, but it is kind of sweet in the beginning and then disappears. This tomato is very much like eating a berry. It's not like exactly eating a tomato. I don't know any other way to put it. It's really like eating a berry and not a tomato. Go over to the tangy part. Now, the tangy part was funny. The center part of the tomato didn't have much of a tanginess in it. However, the skin part did have some type of a tanginess. The center part, the little bit of gel that I was able to get off of it, that part right there was really where all these undertones and everything really lied. It wasn't so much the flesh. There was no real flesh on it. It was just skin and seeds, and basically that's it. There was a little bit of juice and stuff in between it, and that's really it. There's nothing else. This tomato is nothing but skin and seeds. Instead of skin and bones, it's skin and seeds in this case. So the tanginess, I'm probably going to put the tanginess at probably outside the skin, because again, I started chewing the skin, and the skin had like a tangy tardiness to it. But the inside part of the seed area, it did have a tanginess, but not very strong. It was like, I'd say probably between 18 and 20 on the tangy for this tomato, ranging from 0 to 50. So it was kind of on the low side. The tomato flavor. Now we're talking about the strength of the flavor. I'm not sure how to rate this. I was already thinking about this as I was tasting it. I'm not sure if the undertones is the flavor or the flavor is the undertone. I don't know. But as far as the tomato flavor or undertones, if you will, the prominence, how strong and evident was that flavor in the profile, and that's what I'm trying to get across here. That flavor was extremely intense. I'm going to put that at about a 9.5. It is so, this tomato flavor of it is so intense and concentrated that when you cut it open, the air starts to stink around it. It has like a smell to it, and that smell is in the flavor itself. So it's very aromatic, even when you're cutting the tomato. In fact, I'm smelling my fingers, and my fingers have the smell of that on there. So it has a very weird kind of a, I don't know, tomato taste or flavor, undertones. That part of it, the strength of it was extremely overwhelming. It's a 9.5. That's probably the highest rating you're ever going to see on that. But that was literally all tomato flavor. The whole thing, the whole experience was basically that undertone stink. I call it a stink because my hands stink from it now. So it has like a stinkiness to it. But yeah, extremely high on the tomato flavor. Now the moisture was off the scale too, because these things were nothing but liquid. So I mean, as soon as you cut it in half, put it in your mouth, it turns instantly into liquid, skin and seeds. That's what it is. Liquid, skin, and seeds. That's all it was. So if I was to put it on a moisture scale, I'm going to put that also at a 9.5, because it's ridiculously moist and wet. It just put it in your mouth and it turns right to flavor and liquid. So there's no substance to it. The only thing you had between that part of it, the moisture, and the and everything else was the skin and the seeds, which didn't break down. But everything else on the inside was basically liquid. So it was off the chart on the moisture. Tardiness and sourness, there was some, now the skins were very tardy. There was something going on with those skins. It was very, very tardy. If I was to just put a number on the tardiness of the skin, probably go with about a 2.5, maybe even a 3 on the tardiness on the skin. As an overall tardiness, I would probably say maybe a 1.5, if you get my drift. I'm just trying to give you an idea on how I'm trying to figure that out. I mean, the tardiness was just, it was just in the skin, and once you start chewing up the skin, then it started coming out. So it was a real tardy, soury type of effect that I was getting on the back of my jaw when I chewed those skins up. Now the undertones was absolutely off the chart, and I don't know if the undertones was the actual flavor itself or the undertones. I don't know what it was. But the undertones was about, again, 9.5. I don't even know if I can hit it at 10. I mean, it was completely off the chart. It was undertones. As far as I'm concerned, that was the tomato flavor, was the undertones. So that's why I said this tomato was going to be hard for me to review, because I don't know how to place it on any of these numbers. It's not really fitting this chart. It's like trying to review an orange under using my tomato flavor chart to review an orange. It's a totally different thing. It won't apply to an orange. This chart was designed specifically for rating tomatoes and not oranges or apples, right? So this is kind of like that, what we're talking about here. This tomato is more like a berry and not a tomato, and I'm trying to rate it as a tomato, and it's just not working out. So as far as the undertones go, it was a 9.5. It was very strong. Doesn't mean that it was bad, but I'm going to tell you right now, the flavor was definitely weird. I'm going to talk about that right now for a moment. As far as what did it actually taste like, as far as like what did it actually taste like, guys, it had a really strange flavor. Almost tasted like seafood a little bit, the undertones or aftertaste or whatever. But then it also had like a earthy, skunky tone to it, like a very strange, wild, earthy, skunky tone. There's no other way I could describe it. Very weird type of a flavor. It's not the kind of a thing you're going to want to go out of your way and pick and eat. this tomato, anybody who grows this tomato, is simply growing it because of the sheer fascination and love for wild tomatoes, not because you're going to sit there and eat these all day. This is not this isn't the kind of tomato you're going to want to eat all day. It can be eaten, but it has a weird, very weird type of flavor, and it's, everything about it's really strange. Again, it's more like a berry than it is a tomato. All right, so that's basically it with the undertones. It's off the chart with the undertones. The texture, there was no texture. It was just skin. So I can't really rate this by texture. I mean, the whole inside was just basically liquid. It was basically seeds stuck together by liquid, a slimy liquid, and then the skin. That's all it was. So there was no texture. I can't rate the texture very high at all, and I don't even know if it would be fair to rate the texture because there was no texture. But if I was to put a number on it, I'll say 2 on the texture, because there maybe been a little bit of mushiness by the texture, but it's really low on the texture because, again, it was more liquid than anything. And the skin was a problem because the skin, you absolutely had to spit out. You couldn't even chew that skin up. It was so strong and hard. You just chewed whatever juices you can get out of it, whatever flavors you could get out of it, and then you had to spit the skin out. I couldn't even break the skin up in my mouth with my teeth. So it was a pretty hard skin. So again, we'll be rating skins differently. If I was to rate the skin separately from 0 to 5, 5 being super tough on the skin, this would have been a 5. This would have been at the top of the chart for skins. Skins would have been at the top. But we're not really rating it that way. But the skins were tough, and if you were to eat this tomato, I would just say pop it in your mouth and then pop the juice out of the skin while it's in your mouth and then spit the skin out. That's really the only way. Now, as far as production goes, this tomato was actually quite a good producer. It produced quite a bit of those tomatoes. Though in the beginning, when I first started growing it didn't want to produce anything. But now that it's growing and it reached about 5 or 6 feet tall, it spread out about 5 or 6 feet wide, and it really spread itself out. This tomato produced dozens upon dozens upon dozens. So the production of this tomato is basically off the chart. Well, I mean, not off the chart, but I'm going to put the production of it probably at about a 7.5 and 8. We'll go on to production because it did really good, but it didn't do as good as, say, my wild hairy tomato, which would have been, my wild hairy tomato as far as production would have been a 9.5, 10. That's how productive that plant. I made so many tomatoes I couldn't even pick them all up. They're everywhere. They were virtually everywhere. More than 10 times more than my pimps, my Everglade tomatoes or any of my pimp tomatoes. That wild hairy tomato outperformed all of that by a mile because of the amount of tomato, and that was one plant. So this one did pretty good. If I was to just average it out against that and maybe some other pimps, I'd say it's probably about a 7 on that scale. It was a really good producer. I got quite a few tomatoes still on the plant. Just wait until the plant dies, and then we'll get the rest of the tomatoes off. Now, how would I rate this tomato? Let me back you out a little bit. So how would I rate this tomato from a 1 to a 10, with 1 being the highest? And when I'm saying high, when I refer to like rating the tomato, it's like a tomato I can't wait to get out into my garden and either eat raw or pick them so I can make tomato sauce or a salad or something. How would I generally rate that tomato? Is it my go-to tomato, my number 1 go-to tomato? That's what my rating is supposed to represent. How would I rate this? Well, I mean, as a tomato collector, I rate it very high because it's a very rare variety, and I would rate this as a 10 or a number 1 for like rarity of the tomato or any of that. If I was to rate it based on just like the flavor of it, I would rate it a 10 because it's not something I would really want to eat again, to be honest with you. It didn't taste very good, but because I like growing wild varieties of tomatoes, this is going to be a very high. It's going to be up there at about a 1, for wild tomatoes. It's going to be up there with my favorites and my wild tomatoes because they're a fun tomato to grow. But as far as eating, I couldn't even recommend it for eating. Get off of there. So that's how I would rate that tomato. But again, this is a collector's variety tomato. You have to really be a tomato collector or somebody who's really interested in growing wild tomatoes to grow this variety. It's not really something you're going to want to grow for food or production. You'd probably want to grow this maybe because you want some of the genetics into your regular varieties or something to that effect. But if you're looking to grow it for food and production, that's ridiculous. You can do regular tomatoes, pimps. You do Everglade tomatoes. You could do the pink Forbin tomato. You could do a lot of these wild tomatoes. and do much better. This isn't that type of tomato. This is a collector's variety. This is a variety for people who are dedicated tomato growers. This isn't your everyday type of tomato. So that for me to rate this, I can't really even give it an honest rating. But like I said, for a collected variety, I'd rate it number one. It's best variety I think to date. Even better than Solanum peruvianum, and maybe even better than the hairy tomato, because of the rarity of it, and that smell of the plant is so unique. It's very, very interesting. So I give it a high rating among the wilds. I can't really rate it, based off of my other tomatoes, because this isn't, you're not really going to want to eat these guys. I'm telling you, this isn't the type of tomato that it is. So anyway, I don't know what else to say about it. I will leave whatever information I do have on the Chmielewski's wild tomato in the description below, and on the website. And I will also leave a link in the description below where you can go over to the website and actually buy the seeds for this variety and give it a grow yourself. See how you do for it, and you can experience that flavor for yourself, and then watch this video again and see if what I'm saying is really off kilter. See if what I'm saying is on par. Hopefully that it is with what you're growing, but see if it's similar to what I'm saying. All right, so that's it. That's your tomato review for these Chmielewski's wild tomato. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.